The former Carolina Panther and current NFL Network analyst Steve Smith had some real choice words for Jerry Jeudy of the Denver Broncos last night.
For a short while ago, Broncos wide receiver Jerry Jeudy was walking by, and Steve called out to him, and he got a different reaction.
I called out to him because on my podcast, Cut to It, I just talked about guys that maybe have not showed up in a way or in a manner. And so the word that I've used to describe him in the past was a jag, just a guy.
Just a guy.
And so when I saw him, he's playing well. I wanted to say to him face to face, like, hey, I know I said some things in the past I probably shouldn't have, and I'm sorry. That's what I wanted to say to him. His response, Mike Robb and Bucky, was ninja.
Ninja?
Yes, I'm using the word ninja. I'm just using the word ninja. I don't mess with you. And it was a curse word. And so I was like, all right. And then he repeated it. So I'll say it again. I'm sorry that I said you were a jag, just a guy who's an average wide receiver that you use a first-round pick on that isn't doing anything. I hope today that you actually show up in a way that you haven't showed up in the last couple of years since they drafted you. So if you ever got a problem with Agent 89, I'm sorry for saying that you're an average wide receiver that they eventually will move on. And when teams call me and asking, should they trade for you, I will say no, don't trade for Jerry Jeudy, because he's mentally unable to handle constructive criticism from people who watch specifically, can he be a wide receiver? He could be a wide receiver. He's a tier 3. Go back into the studio. I'm done now. Thank you.
The irony is that the Panthers have been rumored to be calling around the league looking for wide receiver talent to add to their team to support Bryce Young. There's even been rumors that they called the Broncos inquiring about Cortland Sutton and even Jerry Jeudy himself. After the spat between the two of them last night, Jerry Jeudy may be a name you can go ahead and cross off that potential target list for the Panthers. So we got to talk about this because I have a couple thoughts about just the interaction between the two and basically how it affects the Carolina Panthers and what it means for them going forward. But real quick, my name is Aaron Duncan here on Necessary Bluntness Sports Talk. I do recap and analysis of the Carolina Panthers. So hit that subscribe button if you want to get your water cooler talking points about the Panthers 3 to 5 business days ahead of the general public, because I'm on top of everything, man. And I appreciate it. You watching, please give this video a thumbs up. Really helps me out in the algorithm, because this type of thing needs to be talked about and discussed amongst us all Panthers fans. And I'm a fan as well, but I definitely have some thoughts about this because there's no secret that the Broncos right now are in selling mode. They've already made a couple of potential trades and releases to some veteran players that they really just brought in maybe a year or two ago under an old regime. And with them currently only having one win, it's pretty much a fire sale in Denver right now. I mean, the Broncos have been in a tough spot, man. They traded a bunch of draft capital and players to acquire Russell Wilson. Then they doubled down on him and signed him to a contract extension that was pretty huge. When they signed Nathaniel Hackett last year, things just kind of went crazy and the team super underachieved. Got rid of Nathaniel Hackett then, ended up making another trade, giving up more capital for former head coach of the New Orleans Saints, Sean Payton. And with things not going according to plan to start this year, it seems like they're interested in pretty much flipping the whole roster at this point, and nobody is safe except Patrick Surtain. Pretty much if you're not nailed down to the flow, you might have to go. And the wide receivers Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy had already been in trade rumors in the offseason. It pretty much had been a done deal that they were going certain places, but some injuries to the wide receiver position during training camp really changed some things for them with Tim Patrick going down, so they decided to keep their two weapons. And there have been multiple reports that the Panthers were interested in maybe one of the two. But after the confrontation last night and during the pregame with Steve Smith and Jerry Jeudy, that ship may be sailed. Then again, Steve Smith did bash Baker Mayfield just last offseason, and the Panthers proceeded to trade for him and make him the starting quarterback. So you never know sometimes. But let's talk about who's right or wrong in this situation before we get into how this interacts with the Panthers. I personally don't feel like either party is wrong. I mean, Steve Smith has always spoken his mind. That's the reason why so many people love him, why so many people hate him. That's why we love him as Panthers fans here in this fan base, and why he partially got a job with the NFL Network. He's also a very accomplished wide receiver who's on a Hall of Fame track, and there's only a few dudes that ever played the game of football that have better stats than him at the wide receiver position. In the grand scheme, his opinion does carry a lot of weight, and it matters. And I personally have not heard what he said about Jerry Jeudy specifically on his podcast, but if we were to take Steve at his word from what he said last night, nothing he said was really wrong per se, based off of the production Jerry Jeudy has had compared to the position he was drafted in as a top 15 draft pick. But it also doesn't provide any context to the fact that he's played with guys like Drew Lock and a shell of Russell Wilson. And in 2020, they even had a wide receiver playing quarterback for their team. Nathaniel Hackett overrated Sean Payton as a coach. It's just been a mess of what Jerry Jeudy has had to deal with. And I know you may push back and say, oh, DJ Moore went through similar circumstances with trash QBs, but he still produced. Yes, nobody's saying Jerry Jeudy is better than DJ Moore. DJ Moore is a borderline tier 1, tier 2 wide receiver that is a wide receiver 1 in his league, one of the better wide receivers in the game. Nobody's saying that Jerry Jeudy is that, though. That's not the argument. So if you want to say he hasn't really lived up to where he was drafted, yeah, that's very fair. But the dude had over 950 yards last year in that putrid dumpster fire that was the Denver Broncos under Nathaniel Hackett. So not too bad production. You sprinkle in a few injuries and him not being able to get on track there, and it explains why he hasn't been able to live up to that potential at this point. And as a Panther fan, you may not be aware, but Jerry Jeudy has really been under the microscope and criticism from a lot of other former players. Former Denver Bronco Mark Schlereth, he had some choice words on the radio about Jerry Jeudy, questioning his effort, questioning him as a player, and just saying that if he was on his team back in the day, he would have cut him by now. And if you step back and look at the full picture, what Steve Smith said was kind of light in comparison to some of the disrespect that Mark Schlereth had for Jerry Jeudy. There's just been this new recent trend of former players, and the new media is what people are calling it, where a lot of these guys have podcasts and platforms, and I really enjoyed that, actually. Some of these guys aren't really providing a lot of details and value in that standpoint. We saw Dak Prescott just get said that he sucks from Dante Whitner, and we heard about him and LaShawn McCoy talking about him as well. Rodney Harrison talking about Zach Wilson. Some of this stuff is not really providing any value from an analysis standpoint. They're just throwing out their personal bias and saying stuff. And these guys hold a lot of weight as former players, so fans really gravitate to this and stick to this when there's really a lot more context to it. You could say they're not really journalists, but if you want to be a part of the media, there's certain things that you have to kind of uphold. Otherwise, you're perpetuating some of the transgressions that were done to you when you were a player, as many players are really tight about how the media portrays them at times. And I personally can't blame Jerry Jeudy for speaking up and having something to say at all. Like, I don't understand why people just expect players to get beat up and take a lot of these rude and disrespectful comments and just shut up and dribble. Like, these dudes are still human. And I understand these are legends and they're accomplished, but just because they say something doesn't mean these players have to kiss the ring, especially when it's trying to be framed as constructive criticism when you're not really doing anything constructive. Mark Schlereth claims to be challenging guys, but questioning the guy's effort and talking about them, that's not challenging him. Talking about guys are this, that, or the third and describing them as a jag, that's not constructive criticism. What's constructive about it? I don't understand how that's supposed to be framed as constructive. So I personally don't see a problem with guys having a problem. And Steve himself said it, that he was going to apologize to Jerry Jeudy because he said some things and Jeudy had been playing better, but Jeudy didn't receive it. He didn't want to receive it, and it's his prerogative not to. And I love Steve, but if the apology was really going to be that sincere, why the double down just because Jerry Jeudy didn't want to accept the apology? Jerry Jeudy doesn't have to accept your apology. He didn't know what you were coming over there to talk to him about. He could have thought you might have been coming to disrespect him some more. And if he doesn't really want that apology, that's his prerogative. You can't let his reaction to you wanting to apologize affect your apology. Because if that's the case, you're just apologizing for yourself. You're not apologizing because what you said or what you did might have affected that party. And Steve kind of even backpedaled himself a little bit later, and that just kind of shows the maturity of Steve Smith, because he even mentioned if he was a player at the time, he probably would have did a lot more and going back and forth. But the fact that he has a job now, he's retired, he's a little bit older, he also doesn't want to perpetuate the media's version of black on black crime when seeing two black guys, young black guys, tearing each other down on this platform at their own expense, but also for others' entertainment.
We had some company on that one. You know, I don't know if Russ saw Jerry Jeudy on that. Did you see him?
Listen, this is a time for me where when I used to play, I would engage and I love that. But right now, I'm 44 years old. I don't need to have this drama, and I also don't need to have any problems on the sideline for me doing something that will jeopardize not just me, but him. And I'll be honest, and I have to say it just like this. One of the biggest problems we have in the media, especially as a young black man, is sometimes black on black crime. I'm not going to participate in that. I'm not going to engage where the national media can see two young African-American men acting like we ain't got no sense. He didn't like what I said, that's fine. I wanted to talk to him. He didn't like it, so we move on. But I'm one, I'm not going to lose my job, and two, I'm not going to disrespect my family by showing that I have not matured and handle my business the way I should handle my business. We got a flight to catch to London. We got things to do. We ain't got time to be watching a dude do nothing. Back to you guys.
Yeah, Steve. We just had a therapy session. I love it, man.
And he was exactly right there, man. And I like I said, kudos to him for that, because that's kind of the reason why I don't like to try to go so hard on certain players. Other people have their own style about how they want to criticize and go about things, but I try to leave it to as much as just being analytical and talking about football. Obviously, I have my moments when I'm reacting to the game and just talking about it, but most of the time when I'm breaking down film and making takes, they're well researched, they're well thought out, they're based in facts and statistics and not just emotions, even though I am a fan. These guys are on the field currently living my dream, so I can't really just disrespect them to a certain extent because they're doing something that I never had the ability to, even though I had a full desire to want to do it. So it's a balancing act of trying to keep it real, but also being genuine and not being disrespectful. But in terms of what the Panthers should do after this, yes, Steve Smith has a strong word, and obviously he has very, very deep ties to Carolina. But like I said, he bashed Baker Mayfield, and things still worked out for Baker to get traded to Carolina. And I still want Jerry Jeudy to be a part of the Carolina Panthers. I know Jerry Jeudy might only had 3 receptions for 14 yards last night in that game, but they only passed for like 100-something yards total. That offense as a whole was just putrid. If anything, the price should go down because as bad or a jag as Jerry Jeudy may be, the Carolina Panthers currently have a garage full of Jags at wide receiver. I don't hear anybody talking about that or going hard at those guys. Jerry Jeudy would probably be the best wide receiver on the team instantly, and with his ability to separate and run routes, this is a guy that Bryce Young would gravitate to. This is the reason why you see him and Thielen clicking so much, because Thielen is smart. He knows zone. He can separate. He's very crafty about creating space for himself. This is the type of guys that you have to put around Bryce Young. Route runners that are smart football players that know how to get open. So I think Jerry Jeudy will be a good addition to this team, and it doesn't prevent us from still adding talent at wide receiver in the offseason and through the draft. And it's not necessarily about making this trade to try to win now. Clearly the Panthers aren't making the playoffs. But at this point, everything is about Bryce Young. He's the most important player to the franchise currently, just based on what we traded for him. So do whatever you have to do to facilitate his success. Getting a wide receiver now is a low-cost option. He'll be under contract for the rest of this season and next year, thanks to his 5th-year option. When that 5th-year option is only about $13 million, they get a chance to build up some chemistry and repertoire right now while Bryce Young is growing himself. And then you get more than just a 1-year rental because you get to see what he can do now and later on down the line. And as I said, it will be low cost, so you don't have to give up that 2nd-round pick for Jerry Jeudy. You can still use that 2nd-round pick on one of these top-tier wide receivers in a very, very deep 2024 receiving class. And I understand some of you guys will say, no, don't trade any picks. This is wait till the offseason and go to free agency. How many times I have to tell you guys? Free agents are not coming to Carolina. It's going to be hard to get guys to come to a mid to small market team that clearly is in dysfunction, doesn't have a lot of money to spend. It is not really the most attractive destination for a 20-something. Yes, it's a good place to be a family man, but how many 20-something-year-old millionaires want to be a family man when they're in the prime of their career making X amount of dollars and being a 1% type of male? I'm just telling you how it is. And the Carolina Panthers damn sure aren't in a position to outbid anybody, even though they do have about $40 million in projected cap space next offseason. So the best way to get receivers here to Carolina is to trade for them against their will and then hope for everything to work out from there. And I'm not going to sit up here and question Steve Smith's ability to evaluate wide receivers. He's been certified. He's the one that picked Cooper Kupp to be wide receiver 1 when nobody really even thought about that. Obviously, he stamped DJ Moore after he was drafted by the Carolina Panthers, and that worked out well. And he was called apparently by David Tepper about the Mingo pick, and so he co-signed Mingo. We'll see how Mingo works out, but that's just the type of clout and pull that he has, especially for the Carolina Panthers. But my question is, as an organization, why are we running multiple wide receiver moves by Steve Smith? Steve Smith is not an employee for the Carolina Panthers. You have a GM You have scouts that are on the road year-round that they pretty much dedicate their lives to going around traveling and looking at prospects. You have an offensive-minded coach that knows his own system. You have a wide receiver coach that knows that same system, that knows what type of skill set they're looking for. Yes, it was cool with Mingo and hearing that background about Steve Smith, getting that call from David Tepper, but there's a systematic problem if we're going to outside parties to make evaluations on players. This is not even a slight to Steve Smith, but did Marty Herney and Ron Rivera consult Steve Smith before they drafted DJ Moore? Was Julius Peppers consulted before we drafted Brian Burns? It just shows me what type of BS his organization is on and David Tepper is running. It's really bothersome to see that we move this type of way, but this whole situation is just it's just crazy, man. But I just think we can't lose the plot about trying to get Bryce Young weapons, because I personally think that Bryce Young has shown enough promise that you need to do whatever you have to do to put enough weapons around him to ensure that he is successful, because I think he can be the next franchise quarterback. But I would rather find out if he's not going to be by putting weapons around him, and I don't have to leave things up to question to say that, hey, is it because we don't have talent around him? Is the protection not good enough? Is that why Bryce is not good, or is he just not a good quarterback? Leave nothing up to chance. Surround him with everything he needs to make a proper evaluation and make sure he is successful on this team. That is the main idea. Keep the main thing the main thing. You guys let me know down below in the comments how you felt about this whole spat between Jerry Jeudy and Steve Smith, and whose side are you on? But without further ado, my name is Aaron Duncan here, signing off with Banter Sports Talk. I'll see you next time. Peace.